How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we have another game review for you today. Trying to pump more of these out. Obviously, it kind of is somewhat dependent on if games come out that I find interesting and want to play, and more importantly, want to buy. Since I don't get set and review copies of video games, obviously, if you couldn't tell by the channel size. But stuff like Xbox Game Pass, which is the copy of the game that's being recorded on an Xbox Series X. That's where all this video game footage is being captured. Helps tremendously with that. But yeah, I just wanted to get some more video game reviews out there. And obviously today, as you can see from everything here, we are reviewing a somewhat recent video game drop of FBC Firebreak. This game is in the kind of co-op PvE, like online or co-op PvE, like horde mission-based shooter game. Some other games similar, not similar in sense of world and setting, but in the same genre, are stuff like Warhammer Vermintide, Warhammer 40k Darktide, and stuff like that, where essentially you kind of team up with a couple buddies or randos or whatever, family members here, or whatever, get dropped into these little worlds and everything with some weapons and some gear kits, have hordes swarming you all the time with a few different enemy variants that are all trying to continuously kill you that you have to kill off while performing some basic functions and tasks to ultimately complete a mission that has been assigned to you for whatever level or world you're in. That is kind of the base footage here. That's kind of the base gameplay here of what FBC Firebreak is. Obviously, the kind of world set here and what you're in, if the name and the title and kind of the fire and the fire hazard gear and the water and everything to get away, you're kind of these like firefighters in this kind of post-apocalypse world here. I'm not entirely sure too in depth of the lore, so I'm not going to dig too deep into that just because I didn't pay much attention. I have completed the game. Obviously, this is very earlier footage, but this is a very short game, which we'll get into in a second here. I believe even if you look at the time to complete, the website that's like how long to beat or whatever, it's like solo 6 hours, co-op 1.5 hours, so a very short game, despite the pretty steep, price tag that they signed in with here. But we'll get that in a second. That's kind of the core gameplay here. As you can see, essentially you and two other people online essentially drop in to these mission zones. Obviously, it's not all the same world or same mission type, but it does always kind of follow somewhat of the same core functionality, essentially, where you're doing the same overarching mission types and mission goals here repeatedly through all the different maps and all different levels, with just a fresh coat of paint on it, where the world and the map is obviously different in view and setting, and some other details are changed minorly, but overarching the goals and the missions and everything are essentially following the same pattern repeatedly, where you spawn in, fix a few things here, as you can see us doing here, get to this kind of end vital mission where you essentially repair or manage something, then get to the extraction as the horde obviously come down and tries to kill you one last time, as they are kind of throughout the game as you unlock different levels and different zones here as you continually fix things, and then you extract. That's kind of the core gameplay loop in a very, very small nutshell, I guess, just to kind of gloss over that. But that is the game essentially, and it's an interesting game. This genre isn't my particular favorite. This like online co-op PvE first-person shooter, like mission-based shooters here. I did have a good amount of fun with Vermintide as well as Darktide for some more recent games in this genre and stuff, and some other games in this genre as well. So I'm not completely opposed to it. And if you are playing with friends or family, people you know, it can be a lot of fun to just mess around and kind of have a good time and comms and everything, and try to complete some fun little missions here. I think that's the beauty in a lot of the entire genre as a whole. Playing online in general, friends can make a good game or make a bad game pretty good. Look at Sea of Thieves before they kind of fix a lot of the problems with that. You can really fuck around with friends and make any game pretty good no matter what. But yeah, the problems with this game past that and what you're seeing here are pretty glaring. First and foremost, I know I said that I played this on Game Pass, and Game Pass is a great deal in general. I think it's probably the best deal in gaming at the moment. That I've talked about that beforehand. I've talked about that beforehand in some other videos. I think if you have Game Pass, you have a couple buddies who want to try some new experience like this, have a little fun, and a pretty short and condensed thing, this is an okay recommendation. It's not the most fun game in the world. It's pretty short. The story is not amazing. The gameplay loop gets fairly competitive, or repetitive. Jesus, not definitely not competitive. It's not a particularly difficult game. Even this is on hard, and this is my first time ever experiencing the game at all. And obviously, I die a few times here, so I kind of did suck. But I did bump up the difficulty in some other missions. Not a particularly difficult game. But getting back on track, it is a fairly repetitive gameplay loop. But the fact is, the game just doesn't last that long until you've done really everything. And there's not a ton of replay value to the point where it's fairly repetitive, but it never gets to the point where it's super long enough for that to incredibly set in. It can get a little kind of boring towards the end of like completing all these missions and stuff and doing everything the game has to offer. But again, if you're with friends, the gameplay's short enough that you don't really mind. My biggest issue with this is if you don't have Game Pass and you're not playing this through Game Pass. If you're just buying this on a console or Steam, it is $40 USD for this game that only lasts a handful of hours if you kind of take your time with it and really pace yourself out. And doesn't offer a lot of gameplay, doesn't offer a lot of unique gameplay, is fairly repetitive, not incredibly inspired. The story is not great. Like, again, I made an entire video about how I think video games in some cases are artificially being made too long and how that's hurting a lot of games. That's not exactly the case with this. Um, I'm all for a short video game. Stuff like Portal and stuff are fantastic games. No matter how short or long a game is, it can be good or bad. This falls into the bad category. There was nothing I mean, the pacing didn't feel like a really appropriate where you delivered like a really amazing gameplay experience, a story, and a short pack and a short punch here, like something like Portal again, for example, where it's like, okay, I don't even care that this game was $5, or it's not $5, definitely not, but 5 hours or whatever. I enjoyed my gameplay so much and my game experience so much, I don't really care. You definitely will. You feel like if you buy this game for full price of 40 USD, thankfully I didn't, so I can't personally speak this, but I don't know how you wouldn't feel a little bit ripped off. Maybe you can complete this game if you're playing with three people and playing through it fast in under 2 hours, like 2 hours or under on Steam, and maybe get your money back. I don't know. That's best case scenario, maybe. But yeah, I don't know how you wouldn't feel ripped off by buying this game for $40 USD. Again, Game Pass, you want to try it, not a huge download, not a huge commitment time-wise. It's a fun game where it's not even a particularly fun game, but it's a game you can mess around in with friends, a new kind of experience, especially if you're into this type of genre and co-op games like this. It's a new experience, might as well pick it up and just try it if you're bored on some afternoon or a couple days there. Might as well. But for everybody else, I can't really recommend buying this game for especially full price. Even half price, like if this was on a 50% deep sale where it's $20 USD now, I don't know that I'd recommend it. The most I'd recommend buying for this game for is honestly $10 USD. Based off the gameplay time you get, and the fun and quality of the overall gameplay experience, I'd maybe pay $10 for this if I had some buddies to play with and we wanted a fresh new experience to kind of fuck around with and distract us for a couple days, maybe at most. And even that's kind of pushing it. The game price just makes no sense to me. I know there's some games that, like Dark Tide, for example, in the same genre, are similarly priced and not exactly the same price in the same ballpark at least, according to, of course, without any sales interfering with that. But Dark Tide is a much more in-depth game, set in my experience, in my personal experience and opinion, a much cooler universe and a much cooler setting with a much better story, much better gameplay in virtually every regard. Um, it doesn't really make. I don't know why you'd buy this. Not a lot of, again, the gameplay, the missions, the maps aren't incredibly interesting. They're fairly repetitive. Same with the I guess type of enemies, or like general archetype of the type of enemies you get attacked by isn't too varied, especially again given the limited amount of maps and missions and time you're playing this game. Your kits again aren't particularly varied. There's three different foundational kits. One's basically just a water hose, one's a repair kit, one's a jump kit for movement and abilities, stuff like that, and zip lining and stuff like that. You're supposed to bring one of each. Not a ton of diversity in classes, not a ton of diversity in the weapons type. As you can see, I don't know if I use the revolver in this video, but that's what you first get assigned to you. I'm using the submachine gun in this. Not a ton of different weapon types, and not a ton of different weapons in general to kind of experiment around with, or different kits to experiment around with, or weapons like grenades or anything in general. A bit disappointed in that regard, but again, for a game that doesn't have a shit ton of content like this, not necessarily surprising that it doesn't have like a metric shit ton of stuff, just because when would you use it? You can pretty easily hammer through this game pretty quickly, even if you're kind of struggling with your first mission like I am, where I'm dying a few times, trying to understand what will and won't kill me with these like fire bursts and stuff, and how far you can kind of push it here. But again, not a very difficult game either. This is not like a huge challenge to overcome or anything. Easy difficulty I never played on, but I imagine is almost mind-numbingly boring, especially with the enemies. The enemies at any point, as you can see here, mainly don't really pose a lot of threat. Most of the threat in a lot of these games are going to be the environmental, like fire hazards on this map, as you can see. That's mainly going to be your threat, especially when you're new and don't fully understand all this stuff like I do. But once you get the hang of it, it's not a difficult game at all. The enemies don't pose, Jesus, a ton of threat. It's more so the map and the environmental hazards, and even that, again, once you get the hang of it, and once you're working with a good crew who understands it pretty well, doesn't pose much of a threat either, even on the hardest difficulty. So it's really not a difficult game. It's not an interesting game. The enemies, again, the horde, not a shit ton of different, even on each map, not a ton of enemy like diversity there. As you can see, there's kind of 3 or 4 main types of enemies you encounter as for this particular mission. There's not a ton of diversity in here. You don't really have a lot of challenges to face, not a lot of new stuff to kind of interact with and overcome. It's just not a very interesting game. I know some people like this, and again, like I've said, it can be a fun afternoon or day of gaming if you and your buddies are bored and have Game Pass, or are willing to just throw away $40 for not very much in return. But in general, I mean, it just really I struggle very deep or very severely to recommend this game to anybody who's not on Game Pass, or this isn't on like a massive deep sale for like $10 USD or less, because I just don't see a huge purpose for it personally. Again, even looking at the other genre, why wouldn't if you want to play this genre because you want to fuck around with friends or something, or you want a co-op game with PvP or PvE, get something like Warhammer Vermintide or 40K Darktide or even Sea of Thieves. I know I mentioned that earlier. Vastly better games. Some of them also available on Game Pass, and not all of them. I can't remember if Darktide is on there or not. I can't remember. I don't think so, but a lot of them on Game Pass. Why would you? Why I don't see why anybody would spring for this unless all of those other games are pretty in-depthly completed by you. You're not really feeling any of them, and again, you want a day's worth of shenanigans with your friends. That's the big use case of this game, and honestly, that's not a very good use case to have, especially for $40. What you get here just really isn't particularly um, a great deal. This just isn't. Again, it feels like a bad deal every time I think about somebody paying $40 for this. The experience just isn't there. Again, I could regurgitate the same stuff. That it's not very long. It's not a very interesting storyline or any story to follow, really. It's not interesting missions or maps or enemy types or weapons that you can use or kits that you can equip. There's not a ton of variety in any of those. It's not very, it's kind of repetitive even for a short game somehow. And again, the deal for the content to money ratio just isn't there for me and most people. I have a hard time recommending this. It's just not a fantastic game. But yeah, that kind of overall encapsulates a lot of my points here. Uh, you can form your own opinions on it if you have Game Pass and you want to just play it real quick, and let me know down below what you guys think about it. But yeah, that's my overarching review. I can't recommend this unless, of course, you have Game Pass and want to try it out, or again, if it's on a deep sale for like $10 or less on like Steam or something, for like a summer sale or something. But even that's probably too soon for them. Honestly, it won't happen for a while probably. But yeah, again, I always appreciate a new kind of world and a new take on video games and trying something new, but this just doesn't really hit the mark. It's not very interesting. The attempt was kind of in vain here, I guess. I don't know what to say. It's just, yeah, I don't know. It is what it is. Out of 10, my review of this, I don't know. I'll give it a 5, I guess. I was trying to kind of think of that while I was kind of regurgitating some of the same information, like what I'd give. Because my last view rematch, I had some issues with it. I gave that a 6.5 though, because I think this. I mean, I was two very different games. I think it is a legitimately better game. But again, what do I say? A 5? Like it's painfully average at best. I mean, because if you have some buddies, it can be a little fun, I guess. Like I honestly, a 5 seems a bit high, honestly, for this game, especially if you're paying full price for it. If you're paying full price for it, I'd be very inclined to give this game like a 4 out of 10, honestly, or 3 out of 10. I legitimately don't think it's an amazing experience or any worthwhile experience for that money, especially. But you'll see in the description when I fully give it. I think I'll stick with a 5 out of 10. If I don't, the lowest I'll go is a 4 because I don't think it's a truly awful game by any means. I don't think it's a bad game, so it's not getting a 0, a 1, a 2, or something like that. But it's not getting anything above a 5, that's for sure, because I don't think it's an average game. I don't think it's above average game or anything better by any means. And I think at best case scenario, it could be an average experience to have with your friends. So that's my reasoning, where it's probably going to get a 4 to a 5, somewhere in that, as you can see from the description if you want to look at that. But yeah, can't really recommend this game to anybody outside of a deep sale or on Game Pass if you want to have a quick little fun experience with some buddies. That's about it. But yeah, let me know what you think about the game down below. What you think about my review? Love to hear you guys' thoughts and opinions on this. And if you somehow like this, or you for some reason like this game, and maybe there's some charm I'm missing to it, or some way of looking at it I didn't really appreciate or something enough. But that's my thoughts on the game. Let me know what you guys thought about it. And yeah, if you enjoyed the video, you enjoyed the channel and the type of content I put out, I definitely highly encourage you to like and subscribe. Definitely helps out the video and the channel a lot and is greatly appreciated. But yeah, that's about it, and I'll see you all in the next one.